Hey guys, welcome to Decode NCRT. Today I, Kusumita, am going to be talking about few concepts from organic chemistry. So today I am going to be explaining you shapes of various carbon compounds, the different bonds it forms that are sigma and pi bonds, also the characteristics of these bonds, also the 2D and 3D representation of organic compounds along with the classification. To start with, the shapes of carbon compounds, we need to have a clear idea about VBT, or nothing but valency bond theory. So valency bond theory basically gives us an idea about the shapes of carbon compounds, or nothing but the shapes of covalent molecules, the bond angles and bond lengths. So this VBT and also molecular orbital theory is based on quantum mechanics or wave mechanics. So this quantum mechanics uses a specific term known as orbital. So atomic orbitals are nothing but a mathematical function which helps us to locate an electron and give its wave nature or wave function in its atom. So when we calculate this mathematical function, we are able to find the probability of finding an electron in that particular orbit or in a particular atom, or where is its position. So these orbitals give us an idea of that. So according to this theory, we are well versed of three different orbitals, that are s orbital, p orbital and d orbital. So these orbitals also have some classifications which we are going to be talking about. But before going ahead, I want you guys to know what are nodes and what are nodal planes. So nodal plane is a plane that passes through the nucleus. So this nodal plane is nothing but kind of an axis or that passes through the nucleus. It can be either a plane or an axis. Next is node. So node is nothing but a kind of function formed when an nodal plane passes through the nucleus. So it's nothing but a probability again of finding that particular electron in any particular orbital. So let's starting with s orbital. It is represented by a circle. And this plane, as we all know that circle can pass through infinite planes. So here if we consider a nucleus, this plane can pass through the nucleus in all directions. Hence, since it's passing through the nucleus or the nuclear or its plane or axis passing through the nucleus, it's told to have one node. While coming to p orbitals, these p orbitals are of this shape, and these are arranged in three different planes. We all are pretty much well versed of x, y and z plane. So each of this p orbital, which is arranged through these different axes, that is x, y, z, form three different p orbitals. So when the p orbital is present along the z axis, it forms the pz orbital. When the p orbital is present along the y-axis, it is known as a py orbital. When the p orbital passes through the x-axis, it's known as a px orbital. So s and p orbital are the ones that are very, very important in organic compounds, because these help in the formation of carbonic compounds. Because we definitely know about the sp hybridization, sp2 hybridization, sp3 hybridization. These are something that we're going to be talking about next in a video. So these are the basics that we need to know. Now coming to the number of nodes here. Since each axis here is passing through the nucleus, that is the center here, it's said that these p orbitals have 3 nodes. While coming to d orbitals, there are 5 different kinds of d orbitals. So here we need to remember small catch. While coming to dxy, here the orbitals pass through the planes of these axes. They don't pass through the axis, they pass in the planes of these axes. So in dxy, here the orbitals pass through the x and y plane. While coming to dxz, here the orbitals pass through the x and z plane. While coming to dyz, here the orbitals pass through the z and y axis. So here you can notice that there is no orbital passing through the axis. So hence these three don't form any kind of node. But while coming to d, x square minus y square and d z square, here we can notice that the orbitals are passing through the axis. They pass through the x and y axis, hence forming one node here. But also coming to dz square, here also the orbital is passing through the z axis, and also it is, and the s orbital here present here, it is in the y and z axis thing. It's passing through both of them. So hence in d orbitals we have two different nodes. So this was the s, p and d orbitals. Now we are going to be talking about how these orbitals are involved in the formation of sigma and pi bonds. So before moving on, I want to discuss about the strength of the bond formed by the overlapping of these particular orbitals. So when a p and p orbital overlap each other, they form the strongest bond. When an s and p orbital overlap each other, that is, when a s and p orbital overlap each other, they form the second strongest bond in this category. But when an s and an s orbital overlap each other, they form the weakest bond of this category. So basically, the strength of the bond is determined by the extent of overlapping. Since the extent of overlapping is maximum, so when p and p or orbital overlap each other, they form the strongest covalent bond. Now, looking at the formation of the sigma and pi bond. So when covalent bonds are formed, that time if the orbitals overlap each other linearly in this particular manner, when an s and s orbital overlap each other in a linear manner, when a p and p orbital overlap each other in a linear manner, and also when an s and p orbital overlap in the form of a linear manner along the internuclear axes, they form a sigma bond. One important characteristic of the sigma bond is that their electrons or the electron cloud is pretty much localized only towards its internuclear axis. That means these electrons are not present above or below them. They are only present along these axes. They are not available on the top, which makes the sigma electron pretty much localized. But when coming to a pi bond, this bond is only formed after the formation of a sigma bond. The only difference between a sigma and pi bond is the orientation of their overlapping. In sigma bond, they overlap each other linearly. So looking at this one, here you can notice that this orbital and this orbital overlap each other linearly. But coming to this orbital, they overlap each other laterally. So this orientation gives it a different bond, which is known as a pi bond. Here the electrons involved in bonding are present below and above the internuclear axis, making the electron cloud pretty much delocalized throughout the molecule. Hence, these electrons are pretty much mobile and are involved in bonding. Now, while coming to the strength of the sigma and pi bond, the sigma bond formed by the overlapping of a p and p orbital is the strongest. When compared to the sigma bond formed by the overlapping of a sigma, formed by the overlapping of an s and p orbital, which is much more stronger when compared to the orbital, which is much more stronger than the sigma bond formed by the overlapping of an s and s orbital, and thus the sigma bond is pretty much stronger than the pi bond. Now, while coming to pi bond, we all have got the fact that here it is only formed after the formation of a sigma bond, and here the orbitals overlap each other laterally. They don't overlap each other linearly. Hence, these here the electrons are pretty much available for bonding, which makes pi bonds much more reactive than sigma bonds, and hence the more number of pi bonds are present in the compound, the more reactive it is. Okay, so now we are going to be talking about the hybridization present in these carbon compounds. So carbon compounds exhibit three kinds of hybridizations: sp, sp2 and sp3. While coming to sp hybridization, here you can see that both of them equally contribute to the particular character present in the particular S and P character given to the molecule. Now, sp, here since there is one s orbital and one p orbital involved, there is 50% of s character present in here and 50% of p character present in here. The best example here is ethyne. We can tell that a carbon is sp hybridized when it involves one sigma bond in hybridization and two pi bonds in hybridization. The shape formed here is linear and the bond angle between these two is said to be 180. Now while coming to the sp2 hybridization, here we can see that there is one s orbital involved and two p orbitals involved in bonding. So there is 33% of s character present in the molecule and 67% of p character present in the molecule. This can be best explained by the example of ethene, where the carbon is bonded to the other carbon atom with the help of one sigma bond and one pi bond. So when one sigma bond and one pi bond are involved in hybridization, the carbon atom is said to be sp2 hybridized. While coming to sp3 hybridization, here we can notice that there is one s orbital and three p orbitals. Hence, there is 25% of s character present in this molecule and 75% of p character present in this molecule. Best example is ethene. Here we can realize that there are not only one sigma bond present here but many. When we write ethane in a much more detailed manner, we realize that carbon makes bonds using 4 sigma bonds. So when 4 sigma bonds are involved in the hybridization of carbon, the carbon is said to be sp3 hybridized. The shape of sp3 hybridization is usually trigonal, usually tetrahedral, and sp2 is trigonal planar. So this is the hybridization that is involved in the carbon atoms. So now I'll just explain the sp, sp2 and sp3 with the help of examples. Basically these are the examples that come for exam. Since you all have understood what is sp hybridization, sp2 hybridization and sp3 hybridization, I am taking an example of a compound and I am going to be explaining what is the hybridization of all these carbon atoms and the number of sigma and pi bonds present here. Now, whenever we are determining the hybridization of an carbon compound, we need to always look at the number of pi bonds present in it. Always the pi bonds, not the number of sigma bonds. Because in different compounds, there might be different number of sigma bonds, but the hybridization determining factor is the number of pi bonds. So while coming to carbon number 1, here we always know that, so let's look at the hybridization of this and this. So we are aware that always the first bond that is formed between two carbon atoms is the sigma bond. Later two are the pi bonds. So now here the number of pi bonds are 1 and 2. Since there are 2 pi bonds formed here, the hybridization is known to be sp hybridized. So carbon number 1 is sp hybridized. The number of sigma bonds present here are 2. The one between C and H and the one between C and C. So I can represent as there is one CC sigma bond and there is one CH sigma bond. We can and also I'm going to be representing the two pi bonds as between the two CC. I'll just write one more here. Now, while coming to the second carbon, here also we realize that the number of pi bonds present in the C and C carbon here are 2. Because the first one here is a sigma bond, so definitely the next two will be a pi bond. So even the second carbon is sp hybridized. So the number of sigma bonds here are also 2. The one formed between C and C here, between the second and the third carbon, and the one sigma bond formed between the first and the second carbon. So C1 and C2. Next, the sigma bond between C2 and C3. and the 2 pi bonds. That's between 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Now while coming to carbon number 3, here let's look at the number of bonds present between the third and fourth carbon. So for this one, here we realize that the first bond present is the sigma bond, and the one that's present below it is definitely the pi bond, because the pi bond is always formed after the formation of a sigma bond. So since there is only one pi bond present here, the carbon is known to be sp2 hybridized. Now let's look at the number of sigma and pi bonds present here. Now number of sigma bonds present in this case are 1, 2, 3. That is one between the carbon atom, one between the 2 and between the second and third carbon atom, one between the carbon atom and the hydrogen atom, and one between the third carbon and the fourth carbon. So that's and the pi bond present between C3 and C4. So sometimes in our exams they ask what are the number of sigma bonds present for the first carbon, or what is the hybridization of the first carbon, or what is the hybridization of the fifth carbon, the number of sigma bonds present for it. So this is a well explanation of that. So in the exam you have to just write that there are 2 sigma bonds present for the first carbon and 2 pi bonds. Hence you can conclude that its hybridization is sp. For the third one, since there is only one pi bond present here, its hybridization is sp2. While coming to the fourth carbon, it also has one sigma bond formed with this third carbon and one pi bond formed with the third carbon. Hence, since there is only one pi bond here again, its hybridization is also sp2. Now looking at its sigma and pi bonds, we can realize that there is a sigma bond formed between the C3 and C4 carbon, a sigma bond formed between the carbon atom and the hydrogen, and the sigma bond formed between the C5 carbon atom and the C4 carbon atom. Now the only pi bond present here is pi C3 C4. Now coming at our last carbon. So here let's see what are the number of, first let's see what is the hybridization. For knowing the hybridization, we need to check the number of pi bonds present in it. C to C, the first bond is sigma. C to H, first bond sigma. C to H here again, first bond is sigma. The last bond also is a sigma. So here there are no pi bonds present at all. So when there are no pi bonds present in the carbon, or it is not attached to anything with a pi bond, it is known to be sp3 hybridized. So here it only has 4 sigma bonds attached to it. So that's sigma with C4 and C5, sigma with CH, sigma, CH. So this is how we find out the hybridization of the carbon atoms in a given unknown chain, and also the number of sigma and pi bonds present in it. Okay, so I hope you all guys are pretty much clear by the concept of hybridization in carbon compounds. So now let's look at the representation. So we can represent carbon compounds in 2 forms. One is the 2D form and other one is the 3D form. So looking first at the 2D form, we can represent it in 3 manners. One is Lewis structure, condensed form, and the bond line representation. So now looking at the Lewis structure, here we can mention about the number of bonds present in the carbon chain along with hydrogen or a particular other molecule, and also represent a number of electron pairs present on it. Here, since carbon satisfies its valency, there are no valence electrons present here, but if we take a carbon compound with oxygen or something, that time we represent it with the help of two valence electrons, means 2 pairs of valence electrons. So Lewis structure is basically a very well and thorough representation of a carbon compound. So the carbon compound written here is ethanol, or that's ethanol, also known as alcohol. Now looking at the condensed form. Now the condensed form is different from the Lewis structure, telling that we don't represent these extra bonds that are formed by the carbon chain. We just directly write number of hydrogens it is attached with and the number of bonds it is attached with the next carbon, or that's attached to the adjacent carbon. So taking the same example, that was the earlier example, that was ethane. Rather than writing 3 hydrogen bonds for each carbon, I have directly written H3C and represented the main sigma bond in between them, and then again written CH3. That means, so this also gives us a clear idea, telling that this carbon atom is attached to the other carbon atom by 1 bond and has 3 hydrogens attached to each one of them. While coming to ethane, here also we get a clear idea that this carbon has 2 hydrogens attached to it and it is bonded with the other carbon atom with the help of 1 sigma bond and 1 pi bond, and this carbon 2 is attached to the other one with the help of 1 sigma bond and 1 pi bond and has 2 hydrogen atoms attached to it. While coming to ethyne, here we can realize that each carbon atom is attached with only 1 hydrogen. Rather than representing it with another dash that is showing the bond between them, we omit the bond in condensed form. We only represent the bond between C and C, not the bond between C and H. Sometimes there might be other functional groups like alcohol, that's OH, aldehyde, CHO, carboxylic acids that are attached to it. For that, we have to separately mention them. Rather than writing H, we can write OH. Or if it is a chlorine, I can write chlorine. So these are different ways to represent them. We don't represent a bond, I'm so sorry. We write them in a bracket either, so that we don't get confused between them. Or if it was in this case, if I am adding one more, if I'm adding an alcohol group to it, I put it in brackets and represent it. So here we omit the bonds that are formed between the carbon and the carbon and hydrogen, and also the carbon and the functional group bond. While coming to the bond line representation, here we only represent this with the help of lines. It's also known as a zigzag fashion of arrangement. And here, to understand what is the structure, every point in the middle, we need to first mark down the tip points of every dash. Always remember that the terminal points always represent a CH3 group, and the rest all tips, or the rest all junctions between the two lines represent a carbon atom. Now we all know that carbon has a valency of 4. So whenever it is forming a stable compound, it will always try to form 4 bonds. So when I expand the bond line representation, I can write it as CH3. The carbon here, this is the terminal carbon here. Now the carbon here, and next the carbon here, the carbon here, and the ending terminal carbon. Now we all know that carbon has a valency of 4, but here there are only 2 bonds formed. So I add another 2 hydrogens attached to it. The same way for this carbon to this carbon to. Here its valency is already satisfied, and here also the valency is also already satisfied. So this is the Lewis structure, and the condensed form for this will be CH3, CH2, 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 CH3. This is nothing but our pentane, and this is the condensed form representation. So this is how you can interpret what is the compound given with the help of bond line representation. So the compounds can be it's not necessary that always the terminal carbon, the terminal point of this of the bond line representation has to be a methane group. If it is some other group, it will be particularly mentioned there. For example, here we realize that they have mentioned in the question only, they have mentioned a OH group and a chlorine group. So when they have mentioned a alcohol and a chlorine group, so we know that here there will be a terminal methane, there will be a terminal CH3 attaching, but here there will be a chlorine attached to it, since it's given in the question, and here there is an alcohol group attached to it. So when we write its condensed form, or I'll write its Lewis structure. So CH3, I'm moving along here. So here the carbon, here it's attached to OH. Now coming downwards, the bond C. Now here I have reached here. From here to here, I'm again finding a carbon atom. Again going down, it's representing the bond here. Again going down, the bond. And then the chlorine. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we are also correct. Now we can fill the rest with the hydrogen bonds. Here, since there is already one chlorine attached, so carbon is forming one bond with chlorine, so it only attaches with other two hydrogen atoms to satisfy its valency. Not only are sigma bonds presented in this way, also we can represent pi bonds, and we can represent double and triple bonds too. So this is the Lewis condensed and bond line representation of carbon compounds. This is a 2D representation. Now let's have a look at the 3D representation. Okay, so we are going to be looking through the 3D representation of carbon compounds. So I have taken here the compound methane. So here, since you know 3D means 3 dimensional, that is in 3 axes. So here when I write the carbon and the bonds formed with hydrogen, here the two bonds are always present in the plane, which are represented by a normal dash. But the one that is present away from the observer's eyes is represented by a dashed wedge. That's in this format. And the one that is present towards the observer's eyes is represented with the help of a solid wedge. So let me consider this book to be the plane. The carbon atom is present here. Now it forms a bond with hydrogen in this manner, another bond with hydrogen in this manner. So you can realize that these two hydrogen bonds formed with carbon are in the same plane as represented by these two. Now talking about the dashed wedge, the bond is formed here. The hydrogen atom is attached at the tip of this marker. So that means, so when I'm seeing here, it's away from my eyes. I can't see it from, if I view like this, I can only see the bonds present in this way and the bond present here. I can't see this one. That's why it's represented by a dashed wedge, and it indicates the bond that is formed, that is present away from the observer's eyes. Coming to the solid wedge, here it is a bond that is formed towards the observer's eyes. So when I look into this molecule, I can see that this bond here is the carbon-hydrogen bond. I can very clearly see it, and it's towards my eyes. That's why it is known as a solid wedge, and it represents the bond formed with the hydrogen towards the observer. So this is the 3D representation of carbon molecules, and it's also known as the wedge dash model. coming to the last topic of our session, that is the classification of organic compounds. So according to their structural arrangement, we can arrange them into two different classes. So one is acyclic and open chain, other one is cyclic or closed chain or ring compounds. So acyclic and open chain are the ones that are present in the form of a chain, and cyclic or closed ones are the ones that are enclosed in a kind of a structure and they all are completely joined in the form of a closed chain or a ring. So these are the examples of cyclic or closed chain-like structures. Now, even the cyclic structures are being divided into two different categories. One is homocyclic and other one is heterocyclic, based on the type of atoms that are present in here. If all the atoms present here are of the same compound or of the same element, that is carbon, they are said to be as homocyclic. But if one of them is a different one, it's known to be as a heterocyclic. For example, tetrahydrofuran, where there is a oxygen atom in place of a carbon atom. If I take the example of a closed pentane, here all the atoms present here are carbon, but for heterocyclic, one atom present here is of oxygen. So this is a heterocyclic compound and this is a homocyclic or carbocyclic compound. Even homocyclic are further divided into two classes known as alicyclic and aromatic. So alicyclic are nothing but are closed structures. Alicyclic and aromatic. So the main difference in between both of them is that aromatic compounds follow the Haeckel's rule. That is 4n plus 2 pi electrons are present in the compound. So while coming to aromatic also, we are furthermore dividing it into benzenoid and non-benzenoid or heterocyclic aromatic compounds. So benzenoid or benzene compounds is a 6 carbon closed chain having alternate pi bonds. So benzene and benzene derivatives are known as benzenoid. So if I attach an alcohol group here, this is known as a benzene derivative. Coming to non-benzenoid or heterocyclic aromatic compounds, these compounds also show aromaticity. That is, they also follow the Haeckel's rule, but they are not benzene derivatives in them. So this is the classification of organic compounds. Hey guys, that's all for today's video. I hope you have understood the basics and fundamentals of organic chemistry. I'll be soon posting a video on the nomenclature of these compounds, which involves the concepts and portions from 11th and 12th standard. If you have any more doubts or if you want me to highlight any more topics in my further videos, please do let me know in the comment box or you can pin me on my Instagram page. So that's all for today. Take care. Bye.